I don't know if this link I just put in the show notes might be better put in the discussion or not, but I just encountered it yesterday, so I thought it might be salient.
Yeah, I've read a couple of things about that. Wait, did I just delete something I didn't mean to delete? Or did I move the Lego Movie 2 down? I don't know. I feel like I had two things there, and now there's just one.
Well, we can always undo. Or that only undoes for me, I guess.
Yeah. Undoes.
Huh, okay. Yeah, we'll throw that down in the, I mean, that's more of a discussion topic. Or that only undoes for me, I guess.
Yeah. Undoes.
You want that iTunes thing in discussion?
Yeah, that's a good news
so.
story.
We'll throw that down in the, I mean, that's more of a discussion topic. Or that only undoes for me, I guess.
Yeah. Undoes.
You want that iTunes thing in discussion?
Just needed to hear Miles. Yeah, that's a good news. So. All right, the stream is streaming. The bits are bidding. Please begin your local recording at this time.
Okay, fingers. Oh, yeah, it worked.
Where's my recording? Recordification. Engageified.
Been thinking of shaving the beard, and then I remember how much I hate shaving every day. And then I think, the beard's okay. All right. I think we're ready to roll.
Let's
Stream
do
is
it.
up. Miles is here. Recordings are recordificating.
Jinder's here.
Oh, there we go. Now we can really start.
Now we can
now
start.
The agendas are up.
Okay, let me disable Dropbox, free up K's of bandwidth. Boom.
Yeah, sometimes I forget how the other half lives.
Yeah, you people. In your bandwidth of unlimited stuff and whatever, and
about 7
people.
Maybe 8 years ago, somewhere around there, I purchased 50 megs of synchronous bandwidth for my 700 users at my school.
Ooh.
And it was like the fastest thing anybody ever heard of. It was just amazing. You got 50 megs. And then it was very shortly after that 50 megs became sort of the default in the home. It's amazing how, but that was like, I signed a multi-year deal to get that. Things change fast.
Yep.
Alrighty then, here we go. I'm going to click this button over here, and then we're going to start a show.
Let's do that thing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Geek Rant, episode 360. Getting Old Isn't for the Weak. Recorded June 2nd, 2019, and brought to you by Element Opie Productions. ElementOpie.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Drive Time Radio for Geeks. I am your host, Mark. On rare occasions these days, known as the Sultan of the Soapbox Cockerel, and joining me this week, as they always do, except when we weren't here, like last week, are your two stalwart co-hosts, Seth, the Gooey Kid Anderson, and Miles, the Aussie Junior Wakeham. Hello, gentlemen.
Yay! Nicknames are back. Woohoo!
Yeah, temporarily.
Howdy.
Yeah, I just, I've memorized that. It requires too much effort to do anything else. So.
Right.
So that just gonna get her out there. Getting old isn't for the weak. I'm getting old, and it's hard. In the last 2 weeks, I have had minor slips on wet surfaces and fallen twice. And that's the kind of thing you expect an old guy to say. You know, I was in my kitchen and I slipped and fell. But it's happening to me on seemingly a regular basis. Apparently once a week now for the rest of my life, I'm going to slip on something and fall. And, you know, when you're little and you fall, you just jump back up. But now that I'm 47, when you slip and fall, you feel it for days. It's crazy how that works.
But at least it wasn't I've fallen and I can't get up.
That's true too.
So,
you're reading my mind, Seth.
So I'm down in the basement today, and I slip on a puddle of water, which is how I discovered my air conditioner is leaking. That's, unpleasant. And there was just a big thump, and my girls are all upstairs, one floor above me, and they say, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm very much not okay."
Oh man, do you have the same sort of water backup problems we get with air conditioners, where you got to get the shop vac out and suck the whatever they call that drip line out of there?
Well, this is one of those little portable units that you vent out the window, the stand-up guys, and it's got a reservoir in it that collects the water, and you take it outside and you dump it. And typically I do that a couple of times a year, but here lately, like in the last 2 months, the humidity here has been even more intense than normal. So I've been emptying it multiple times a day. And apparently at some point in the dragging it outside to empty it, I cracked the basin. And so now it does, it's not a big crack, but now it doesn't hold water at all. It dumps it right out onto the ground. So the mitigation I've come up with is if I pull the plug out of it and just put a bucket under it and let it drip straight into the bucket, I could use my air conditioner. But if I try to plug it, it drips out the crack somewhere. I'm sure if I search hard enough, I'll be able to find the crack and epoxy it. But for now, the bucket is working.
Yeah, that's what you need to do. Bush fix it.
Yeah, that's Tightwad Tech approved right there.
Yes, sir.
So, Seth, you, if I can remember your Facebook post correctly, John Wick 3, they really Johned the Wick out of it.
Yes, they did. So I went and saw it, because it takes place like John Wick 2 just ended, so in much the same way it was like Back to the Future 2 and 3. I think they did that, so it like started, or 1 and 2. So it starts immediately after the end, and it goes through, and it's just over the top John Wiccan stuff. There's some really cool scenes, and then there's some callback. Like there's this one line, so it's just a line of dialogue, but John Wick is talking to this person, and the guy says, "So what do you need?" And he says, "Guns, lots and lots of guns." And so you get that Matrix callback, and so there's some fan service like that in the film. Good. And it is set up. There will be a John Wick 4. They're probably already working on it. So so far, it's been pretty true. Or the story has been kind of, they've maintained the continuity. So in a way I didn't think they would be able to do. Looking forward to John Wick 4. You go see, if you liked John Wick 1 and 2, go see John Wick 3, because it's more of the over the top action. There's lots of killing. And there's several scenes that are set up to make it more like a music video stylized dancing gunfighting. Like there's this one scene where they enter this room, and then they stop and pose, and it's just for that shot to look cool. And you realize it when you go, "Oh, that's a cool shot," and that's the only reason they had them do that, because they go in and they stop with their guns all pointing in a different direction, and it was really visually stunning. Anyway, so like I say, go see John Wick 3 if you liked John Wick 1 and 2.
So I know nothing about John Wick. I haven't seen any of them. I'm not even sure I've ever seen a preview of it. Give me the 30-second rundown of who John Wick is.
Okay, so he is apparently this uber assassin underworld, big bad wolf kind of thing. And he had retired and gotten out and did some type of thing to get out. And then the reason he got out was because of a woman, and then she had died. And so he got pulled back in because of this stupid thing. And so now he's back in the world. And then because of some circumstances, now he's like on the run from the underworld that he just recently got back into. So
it's a completely unique story and unlike anything I've ever seen before.
Pretty much, yeah.
That sounds
with
awesome.
Keanu Reeves.
Yeah. So along those lines, my wife was watching something on the Hallmark Channel the other day, and I passed through the room and I saw the Hallmark Channel logo in the bottom of the screen, and I said, "Oh, is this the one where there's some sort of misunderstanding?" And she said, "Yeah." Oh, then I've seen that one, and then continued on through the room. I wanted to talk about a couple of movies really quickly. One is on Netflix, a Netflix original, The Highwayman, starring Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson. And they play the Texas Rangers that took down Bonnie and Clyde. And so it is not the Bonnie and Clyde story. It's the story of the men who chased Bonnie and Clyde, but the story of Bonnie and Clyde is weaved through it. It is a slow-paced... lots of still shots, lots of shots of just guys sitting around in the Alabama heat sweating. But it's really good. It's well written, it's well acted. If you can get past the fact that it's slow, I mean, I kind of like movies like that sometimes, where you don't have to be paying attention to every shot. But it's really good. There's some good jokes in there about them, being old guys. Woody Harrelson has to pee every 5 minutes, and they, seriously big time badasses in their day 40 years ago, right? They go to show off their gun tricks and can't hit the broadside of a barn. There's some little things like that, but also there's a lot about how Bonnie and Clyde were sort of not really the first, but the last really of the outlaw celebrities. And how women dressed up like Bonnie, and Clyde was like writing op-ed pieces for national newspapers and that sort of thing. So in that way, it was a really interesting sort of character study. I enjoyed it. You may enjoy it as well. And then the other one was the Lego Movie 2. I loved the Lego Movie. It was unique. It was original. It was funny. It was heartwarming. And this one is a sequel, so it has none of that.
Awesome. Everything you liked about the Lego Movie, we did. So this is all the stuff you didn't like about it.
This is just more self-referential cash grab. Let's be clever to be clever, and it's not working clever. I didn't dislike it. My 11-year-old, almost 11, has watched it twice now. She loved it. So it's a kid's movie. But the first one was a kid's movie that worked for adults. This one's a kid's movie. So that's all I have to say about that.
Okay.
And then Miles, you just have here, it says question about the show. What is your question, Miles?
I've had this question and keep forgetting to ask because I don't ever think I've heard the answer to this over the 300 and something show episodes. Where did the theme music come from for the show?
It came from a search of royalty-free music, and I liked it, and that's all there is to it. It's I have this posted because I have to online somewhere. I have to go find the forum thing, but I believe the artist is called Freight Train Jones, and I just liked the music, and that was all there is to it.
Okay, that's good. It was just a curiosity. I thought, that's really cool. I mean, it's actually quite strong intro music compared to a lot of podcasts I listen to. And I thought, yeah, it's pretty nice. I mean, I don't know if you've encountered the same thing, but periodically I watch people's YouTube channels and listen to podcasts, and I keep coming across them using the same music for different shows.
Yeah.
And it's really embarrassing. You're thinking, hang on, that's not your music. That's somebody else's. And being a musician, it's kind of like, well, why don't you get a musician to put something together, Anyway.
I'm kind of picky about that. Each of my shows has unique intro music. Each one is very different. If you go back and look at the historical shows, I think I've done 11 different named podcast over the years. Each one has its own music. Each one has its own style. They tend to be very guitar heavy because I like guitar music. But yeah, I take pride in that. I get some guff occasionally from the millennials who can't wait 30 seconds for something, and they say the music is too long and that you need, no more than 10 seconds of music. I like a nice intro and outro. So yeah, there you go.
No, I think it works. it is the signature of the show. You hear that music and you know what you're going to be listening to.
Yeah, and because it is royalty free and it's out there, there may be somebody else using it, but maybe not. And I like to try to cut. I like to try not to use the beginning or ending of a song, because for that reason, I want to pick an interesting piece in the middle. In this particular case, it is the beginning and ending of the song that I use, but I just like it. I like the black helicopter and the ask not what your country can do for you. You know, we talk about a lot of historical sort of stuff, so it seemed to fit. And so there you go. That's the answer to the question.
Very cool. Thank you.
Listening audience, what questions do you have? We have been doing this a very long time now, and I'm sure that you have some questions like that. And Miles is a host of the show and didn't know the answer to that. So let us know what you think. All right, so let's move finally into the news part of the show. I haven't read this article. I don't know what it is. I just like Seth's intro to it. If Comcast doesn't know it's lobbying, is it still wrong?
Yeah, so this is an Ars Technica piece where basically shareholders are like clamoring for Comcast that it should stop being secretive about its lobbying activity. And Comcast comes back as, guys, we're not being secretive. We just do so much of it, we don't know where all we do it anymore. So it can't disclose its lobbying because it would be too hard. You hit it too far, so it's too hard to, we just pay these lobbyists and, we're raking you for profits and we got to do something with it. So, lobbyists, they need work too.
So they can't just go look at the checks they've written and just say this was the one.
Well, when you write that many, apparently it's too hard. I thought that was quite comical that their defense for not disclosing is it would be too hard to list them all. But we're not being secretive. There
are certain companies that just suck. And everybody knows they suck. The company knows they suck, but we just have to live with them. Comcast is on that list. AT&T is on that list. They are terrible companies, and the companies know they're terrible companies, but they have no incentive to not be terrible anymore because we have to use them. eBay is another great example. eBay is a terrible company. They do terrible things. But you have to do it because really they're the only name in electronic payments right now. And so, others have tried, but nobody's beat them. And Comcast is just one of those juggernauts that you just have to deal with. You just have to eat the turd sandwich and accept it. And even Comcast knows that they're a terrible company. And when they make a statement that says, we're so bad at our job that we don't even know who we're bribing, that's an admission that they're a terrible company.
Yeah. And, a lot of times you would say, God, and are they so incompetent that, the sad part is they are so incompetent that a rational, the 5 rational people in America who are left will read this story and go, a lot of companies, I wouldn't believe that. But coming from Comcast, that's a viable defense strategy for them. And, so maybe they're being secretive and they're, maybe they're not incompetent. They're just genius masquerading as incompetent so they won't be held to the same standards of everybody else.
That may actually work for them. At this point, they're kind of like Google. When somebody slaps them around or whatever, they just say, pfft. That's their response. And Comcast is kind of getting to that point.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's us.
Oh, what? You want a $2 billion fine? Fine. Yeah, take that out of petty cash.
That just means we're going to raise everybody's rates.
What's really bizarre to me is that they're like the heavy hand of government is the focus of this, the fact that they have to lobby anything because they're not competitive is kind of a big issue. But that's the market we have, isn't it? We're not free market anymore. So what do you do?
Well, we are a free market in everything except places where the government doesn't want us to be a free market.
Right.
And, At least Comcast is making money. Uber, on the other hand, they're just losing $1 billion, and they're fine with that.
Yeah, so we used to do all those stories about how BlackBerry, they lost 3.2 billion this quarter, whatever. So apparently when BlackBerry went under, all the executives went over to Uber, and Uber this is its first filing post IPO, and they lost 1 billion with a B dollars.
And their stock prices went up.
How do you lose $1 billion? I had it sitting right here, boss. I don't know what $1 billion. How? So does this mean that, guys, if we just, if we cut the cappuccino in the bathrooms, you can still get in the break room, just can't get in the bathrooms anymore. That'll shave off like at least $1 million or $2 million. And then does this mean that how much people pay for Ubers is artificially low because there's a price war between Uber, Lyft, and all the other little niche players, and that once the dust settles and there's only one or two left, it'll be $15 to take an Uber 2 blocks, or does this just mean that this is a company and everybody's being greedy and they're paying off all the people who were there with bonuses and stuff, and that if they really want to be a company, they need to grow up and show some fiscal responsibility?
No, they're absolutely trying to put cab companies out of business. That's their model. That's what they want to do. They want to come in and put cab companies out of business. Then they have a monopoly. Then they're Comcast, and then they can do whatever they want. And Wall Street is okay with that. They posted $1 billion loss, but they had already told people that we're going to lose about $1 billion. And when that happens, investors go, oh yeah, I mean they did what we expected. We're good with that. And so their stock prices went up by 1% by losing $1 billion. And they're playing the long game here. Their investors are playing the long game and saying, once we get those pesky cab companies out of business, then we can make whatever money we want.
Do you guys use Uber?
I have the one time when I needed to come from Tennessee home, and it was far from cheap. I don't know what cab fares cost. I grew up in a driving state. In Texas, everybody drives everywhere. So I don't have that experience of what cabs fares cost. But not too long ago, both my wife's vehicle and mine needed some auto repairs, and I was just going to do them both in the same day and take an Uber to work that day. And I needed an Uber XL because I didn't want to get right in the back seat of a Ford Focus. So I looked up what an Uber XL would be for the 18 miles one way, and it was like $53. People are telling me that this is a bargain. I don't see it.
Yeah, it was for years that I resented Uber. I don't know why. It just didn't feel right to me. And my daughter, who was, a typical sort of Gen Z or whatever they call them now, was saying, oh, you should use Uber, you should travel with Uber, put the app on your phone, all that sort of thing. And then one day I found myself in San Francisco. I was doing some work for the Unified School District there, which is right in the center of town. It's in the sort of where the courthouse is in San Francisco. And I was staying at a hotel. Had to get to work, had to get to the client site, went in there, did my work, needed to leave, tried to find a cab. Good luck with that. There are no cabs in San Francisco anymore, at least not unless you want to wait 45 minutes for one to magically rock up anywhere near you. And that was my turning point, right? That's when I put the Uber app on my phone and I realized, well, you can't beat them, you got to join them. And ever since then, I've been amazed at the experience. I mean, you literally just go to your phone and say, get me a ride, and then a car rocks up. And it's magic. And I thought, yeah, I get what this company's trying to do. And then I did have a problem with, I was in Dallas, and I had to get from the airport to my hotel, which I had a delayed flight. It was like 1 a.m. And the only option I just literally worked out curbside from the airport, jumped in a cab, went to the hotel. The guy charged me nearly $50 for what was a 2-mile ride. And at that point, I'm like, yeah, no, I understand exactly why Uber exists, because of these, corrupt cabbies, And then if you ever travel overseas, like in Mexico City, you can travel anywhere across the city for $2 with Uber. And this is a city that has more taxi cabs in it than anywhere else in the world. Uber, when they work and when they do what they do a bang up job. Absolutely fantastic. But in the United States, little by little, the price is starting to get out of control. And the cabs, they're not cheap. I mean, they've traditionally been twice the price of Ubers. But at the same time, Uber's inching up to be a cab company. And at that point, I'm not sure if there's enough advantage here anymore for them. So I don't know. I like the idea of Uber. I also like a decent cab ride with an honest cab driver. Show me one and I'll give them my business. But, that's the problem, right?
Yeah. Honest cab driver. That'll be.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Uber, the one Uber ride I had, again, it was from Chattanooga, Tennessee to just outside of Atlanta. It was for 5 people in my family. It was $300, which I don't know what a cab would have cost for that. But that was not cheap. But I had, 90 minutes in the car with this person, and we were talking about it. I was asking about Uber, and one of the things that she told me was that the Uber drivers don't know where you want to go when they agree to take the call. So you say, their app says this person is at this address. Do you want to pick them up? And you say yes. And then they go to the address and they report in, all right, I'm here. Then the app says where you want to go. So when I said I wanted to go 130 miles away, she was like, and to her credit, she did it, but she didn't know that until she had showed up. And I was loading stuff into the car. So that doesn't seem like the right thing to do for people.
So, just curious, and you don't have to share. Did you tipped very well, right?
I did, because I was I believe in tipping. I believe tipping is an important thing to do. And so, yeah, for the $300 ride, I think I tipped about $50. So yeah, that's a thing.
Okay.
So yeah, let's talk about tipping for just real quick right now. Tipping is not for that visit. Tipping is for the next visit. All right, when you go to a restaurant and your waitress doesn't serve you to the best of your ability, or you don't think they served you properly, and you leave a chintzy tip, the next time you go there, not only that waitress, but every other waitress in that restaurant is going to know who you are, and you're not going to get stellar service. But if somebody's having a rough day and you give pretty poor service, but you give a generous tip, the next time you go back there, not only that waitress, but every waitress in there will know that's the guy that tips big. Pro tip right there.
Yeah.
Well, there's something peer-to-peer about tipping. Like, you actually get that opportunity, which is kind of rare, where you can reward the service provider for quality work. And, we all have bad days. We all don't want to get out of bed. We all, don't want to work. But if there's some little light at the end of the tunnel, some little pat on the back, some attaboy, something that just says thank you, because the boss probably isn't doing it. And if they're just living on a wage all the time, if you go to any country that doesn't have tips, and I come from one, the service is disgusting. It's horrible. Because all they want to do is show up, collect a paycheck, and leave. They don't want to provide anything that's stellar. And tipping provides a level of service that we forget is above global standards. The United States level of service is beyond good. And most of it is because it's incentivized at a peer-to-peer level. So I'm a big fan of tipping. I would prefer to pay less for the product and pay more for the tip, but that's me.
I used to be a really big fan of tipping, but one of the things that I still tip decent, at least I think I do. But everything now has a tips thing. It's like, no, I'm not going to tip you for cashing me out. That's your job. I'll tip a waitress, I'll tip a server, something like that. But tips for, at the Subway counter or whatever, just for making this. No, I don't know. it just almost seems whiny. Oh, please tip me too. Where? I don't know. What do y'all think about that?
I think the tip should be commensurate with the work done, right? So the industry standard is like 15 to 20%, right? So, but I don't tip the pizza guy that. If I order $50 worth of pizza, which, I have a family of 5, that's not hard to do. I don't tip him, $7 on that because it's his job. He drove to me. He opened the door. He handed me the pizza. I do tip. I usually $3 to $5. But yeah, there are things like that. The guy at the Chinese restaurant that's doing the hibachi for you, and you go through there, I tip him, and I make sure he knows that I tipped him because I don't want spit in my food. But generally speaking, yeah, I'm not going to tip the barista, for example. I don't drink other people's coffee, but anyway, that's not a thing that I would do because I don't see that as service beyond your job. And generally those people are actually paid a wage. It's the pure servers who just aren't paid a wage. And then, that's what they're living on.
Yeah. And I sort of think that maybe the worst case of a tip is when it's misused outside of its original intent. Like if you rock up to a counter to order food, directly with the cashier, and they're going to just give you the food. You're just going up there to pay for it and collect the food. And then they give you the bill, and on the bill is the price and then a gratuity section and then the total. And you feel bad about writing nothing in the gratuity. I don't think you should feel bad about that because they're just a cashier. They're not giving you anything other than handing you the food. But if there's a waitress whose job is to go and get the food and bring it to your table and take care of you and make sure you're happy with it and then refill your drinks and all that other stuff, sure, there's a proper service being rendered, but not when it's just an assumption. And a lot of the times you see like the tip jar on the side of the counter. I still just have a problem understanding how you could expect to ask for more money for doing a service you're already getting paid for when you're not really leaving the counter. But I don't know. There's probably people out there listening to this show, fuming right now because they're, working in some diner or something, and this is how they, make ends meet. I'm sorry if you're serving me at the table, I do tip well, but not when you're handing the food over at the counter. Sorry.
I have seen servers at a place I frequent argue over who gets to wait on my table. And that's what a tip is for. And that's because I have a history of over tipping these people time and time again. And I get amazing service everywhere. When I go to get my hair cut, I go to Great Clips, Sport Clips, something Clips. I don't know what it is, but there's always, a handful of girls there and they argue over who gets to cut my hair because they know I'm the guy that's going to tip them really well. And not that my haircut's pretty difficult. It's a couple of clippers, but I just think it's a thing that I enjoy. I enjoy over tipping people to the point of, for example, if I'm at a buffet type restaurant and the bill is $10, I'll tip $20 on $10 because I believe that much in over tipping people. I get amazing service everywhere I go.
Cool.
Another thing I like to do is around Christmas time, usually before Christmas, like right after Thanksgiving, I'll go to the bank and I'll pull out as many $100 bills as I can afford that year. I save up for it. It's my charitable giving. And let's say 5 $100 bills, and I will, during the month between Thanksgiving and Christmas, leave 5 people a $100 tip. Because you never know how. I mean, I had one. It was a haircut place, and she burst into tears and said my kids weren't going to have anything because I didn't have any money. That tip's not about her. That made me feel so good to do that. That was a totally selfish thing to do. And now I'm telling you about it, so I get extra credit. I'm being uber selfish about this. It's not altruism at all. I just like doing it. And I save up. I planned for it throughout the year. There's a line item in my budget for giving obsessive tips.
Cool.
All right, enough about that. iTunes may be going away, says Apple. Does anybody care? Actually, I care a lot. I'd be super happy to see it go.
Well, you know what I'm worried about is podcasts, because the entire podcasting industry uses iTunes as the master directory. Other sites and other services out there have tried to compete with this, but because Apple was the pod of podcasts, the iPod, by pure tenure, they've become the default directory of all things podcast. So if you wanted to find a podcast, the only place these days you can go where you can get everything is going to be iTunes. If they get rid of iTunes, which they appear to be going to be talking about tomorrow at the Worldwide Developers Conference, who takes over the vast directory of all podcasts?
It'll happen. I don't know who. Stitcher or Slack FM or one of those guys will do it. I wonder if, we have said many times on this show that go leave us a review on iTunes, because if it's going to be seen anywhere, that's where it's going to be seen. But most apps now scrape multiple directories, and so you don't necessarily need to be on iTunes to show up. And I don't know that it's necessarily the place for discovery anymore. It is the place for reviews. And honestly, reviews on podcasts don't seem to be very valuable at all. But I don't think Apple's going to dump the podcast directory or the iTunes directory. They're just going to dump the piece of crap software, and they're probably going to break it out into the podcast app, the TV app, and the music app, and just leave it that way. So the directory will still be there. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah, because, in a lot of ways, it's like iTunes University. That used to just be iTunes. They broke it out into its own thing, and now it's iTunes U. So, it will probably be iTunes or iCast or something stupid like that, because it's got to have an I in it, or, I don't know, Apple doesn't get paid or whatever. So I think that's probably what's going to happen, is just, it's going to be, they're just going to break it apart in a way that's good, because, iTunes is a beast hog of infinite proportions. So if they can do something to chisel away at it and make their services good, go them. And then maybe it won't destroy every Windows machine it gets put on.
I think
Go ahead.
I think it's very likely that whatever the thing is won't run on a PC. It will be a iPod device only. And I think that's how they're going to try to insulate the market.
That was my question too. This could turn around. We're seeing some very interesting changes in the DNA of technology. The one that comes to mind right now is Windows announcing they want to use a Linux subsystem on upcoming Windows 10 versions this year. That's a total 180-degree directional change from a company that used to be so anti-Linux. The Mac with iTunes, they were very hesitant to produce a Windows version of iTunes. And when they did, as you rightly say, Seth, they created a bloatware hog of an app that, doesn't run very well at all, but they wanted to sell U2 albums to Windows users or something, so you had to have it. If they go Apple centric and iTunes is only going to work for Apple devices, I think it could be the death knell of them. The reason I say that is that they haven't innovated in any way in technology compared to their competitors in the last 2-3 years. There's not, and it sounds so cliche, but sort of since Steve Jobs died, Apple's done nothing really great. Yeah, it's actually true. They haven't produced anything that's innovative. Their operating systems are just another version of the same thing. Their laptops now have a touch bar nobody uses. That's about it. Their desktops don't even keep up with, the advancements in processor technologies. And I know, look, all these Apple fanboys that if there's any listening to this show, I'm surprised. But if Apple fanboys are going to be like, oh no, they've done all this, blah blah blah. It's like, no, they really haven't. And at some point, if they're starting to change things that actually did create profit for the company in terms of margin on selling, CDs and music and whatever else they're doing, that could be the end of it for these guys. So I think if they're going to get rid of iTunes and put something else out, it's got to be a completely platform independent. Everybody can use it. You don't have to be an Apple, part of the Apple ecosystem, or Apple's dead. At least that's kind of my take on it.
I think they make so much money off of their service stuff now because they get their 30% because they, took somebody else's idea of an app store and made it popular, that they don't really care anymore. And they're just sitting on so much cash that what do they care? They're just like, hey guys, let's do some. No, we got plenty of money. We got stupid people buying our crap. Why should we put effort into making good stuff when people pay money for the crap still? So.
Well, recently that was that new Google Pixel 3 XL or whatever they call it that came out. $399 phone with that spec. Unbelievable deal. That is a 180-degree turnaround for an industry that was doing the north of $1,000 phone thing, and Apple did that. Apple created that stupid FOMO fiction of an iPhone, and priced it north of $1,000, out of the reach of anybody, particularly in a foreign country where economies are not necessarily as liquid. That was, their way of doing things. And Google's come around and slapped them around the back of the head with a $399 phone that probably would outperform an iPhone 10. So at this point, again, another example of where Apple could be on their death knell. I mean, I know people have said that for decades and they've always managed to come back. Yeah, because they had Steve Jobs. They don't have Steve Jobs anymore. Tim Cook is not going to turn this company around. If they screw up, which it looks like they are intending on doing, I don't think anybody can pull them back from that.
I don't know. I have lost too many bets betting against Apple. But I will say, just to remind you, that the Pixel 2 was a $1,000 phone. So, this may be an experiment in Google in subsidizing their own hardware to try to shoehorn it in. I don't know what the story is there. But Apple could absolutely play that game. They've got enough cash in the bank. They could subsidize their own hardware, and the next iPhone could be a $400 iPhone. But they don't need to do that because everybody gets their iPhone for free. Right, they go to the AT&T store and they tack on $20 more a month for your thing, and you get a free phone. And that's how most iPhone people get their iPhones. The price is irrelevant to them because they're not paying it, or at least they don't realize they're paying it. They're actually paying a ton of money because they're paying forever on this thing. But yeah, most people are riding that 2-year upgrade cycle and not really caring about how much a phone costs.
Yep. Man, So yeah, I don't know, but there's got to be something, because we can't keep doing it the way we've been doing it. And I say that, but yet why would we change? Is there an impetus to change anywhere? I haven't found it, if there is. So,
well, there's Mark's right in explaining it that way, because that's exactly what's going on. People don't feel the pain because if you get it every month and it's just a little $20 additional cost or whatever, or even $50, you think of that as, well, the price of a couple of pizzas, or, it's not really going to hurt. Well, it does hurt when you increment and add it up, because you're doing this probably 10 times over and all of a sudden this becomes real money. But that little, you don't feel the pain so much because you're paying for it bit by bit. Yeah, that might be okay if it's just you, but if you've got a family of 5 people and, the husband, the wife, and maybe the kids have all got phones, you're cutting a massive check every month. I mean, that's starting to really eat into, you're getting up there, and that's the price of my property taxes kind of range. It's an unfortunate situation because it's an illustration of the exact same problem that I think we have with things like healthcare. When healthcare costs are uncompetitive because they're so expensive, rather than addressing the cost factor and finding a way to do something more efficiently, cheaper, and more competitively, we focus our attention on who's going to pay rather than what you're actually paying for. And I would say with a phone, I mean, come on, it's a phone. It's a phone. It's a little phone. Yeah, okay, it's got a processor and it can do nice things and you can play video games on it. But it's a phone. I mean, is it $1,000 computer? No, it's a phone. But no one's pointing the finger at the manufacturer going, get this price down. Come on, this is ridiculous.
Precisely.
We have circled this drain a number of times over the last 18 months, and it all comes down to people are too comfortable with buying things they can't afford. If I can afford the payment, that counts as affording it. No, it doesn't. And until we break that cycle, none of these other cycles can be broken. People have to understand what a thing actually costs. Once they understand that, and then they have to understand what they actually bring home. Most people couldn't tell you what their take-home pay is. They might tell you what the net is, on the check they get every month, but they don't know what they're paying in taxes. They don't know what they're paying in like you said, property taxes. They don't have any idea that a good 40% of the average American's take-home pay isn't actually taken home. And so until people understand that, none of these problems are going to go away.
Yeah, bottom-up math.
Yep, and the thing is, it's so much easier. Changing people is hard, and so are we going to fix our healthcare system? No, because that would be impossible. So instead, we're just going to create money so you can buy into a broken system, so there's no need to fix it. And we're going to subsidize it with our children's future. By the government paying for it, and the government's not paying for it. Your children's government is paying for it. And, one of these days, because there's so much wealth flowing out of the working people of America, that the number one economy in the world is all of a sudden going to dry up because nobody has any more money to buy stuff because it's servicing all the crap that was bought before that wasn't needed, and people like who follow Dave Ramsey's plan to get stuff paid off. Okay, that's great. But we as a country despise Dave Ramsey because he preaches personal responsibility and we don't want that. Well, we say we want it, but what we want more is the new iPhone. And it doesn't matter what the specs of the iPhone. You could make it a dual core processor with 640K of RAM and call it the iPhone 15, and there would be lines out the door to buy it, and everybody would say how great it is because it's 2/1000ths of a centimeter wider than the previous model, and that would be the feature that would be talked up. And so who cares that we can't afford it? Who cares that we don't need it? We have it and it looks pretty. So go America.
Well, the biggest thing that slows down productivity and innovation and creativity is debt. And people forget that. But if you're a business and you have a great idea, but you're slugging around a debt load and that you have to sort of work, bring it down to a personal level, right? Let's say I'm an inventor and I've come up with this great idea in my garage and I want to sell it on TV and get a patent and all this sort of good stuff. I'd love to go and go all in on that because maybe it's the cure to cancer. Maybe it's maybe it's antimatter gravity or who knows what it is, but I've invented this thing and I want to make it happen. How can I do that when I'm slugging around a mortgage and student loan payments and healthcare costs and credit card debt? I have to go and get a job, right, just to service that debt. So my idea stays in the garage. It never comes out. That principle magnified up is a corporate problem. They don't have any R&D money, so they go and buy other companies to try and get the R&D, out of them if they can find them. But we're running out of that because we've got too much debt load out there. So yeah, I'm with you, Seth. There's the advantage of freedom from no debt is more to do with you get real freedom, right? Where you can actually choose what you want to do with your life and where you want to spend your time. And that's a great thing, but you're going to be, you're chipping away at that. You're removing that option every time you go and pay T-Mobile $50 extra a month for your iPhone.
Yeah.
I really think the only thing left to say after that is, Seth, what happened this week in history?
All right. Well, not a lot, unfortunately. I was scouring the web, but I wanted to let you and the Element OP audience nation out there know that on May the 30th, 1996, AT&T announced a video phone call system. So they held a meeting to announce a system that would allow personal computers to make and receive video phone calls over standard telephone lines. It was a culmination of years of effort, and so it would go over ISDN T1 or T3 using compression software. But 1996, and really, it's something that never materialized. They just announced it. So, but think about that. 96, so over 20 years ago, they had something that would allow video phone calls. This is really, I mean, talk about a baby World Wide Web. There was no Google back then. There was no Amazon. Yahoo was merely a collection of links that the guys who founded the company liked. There was no organization of what would the killer app that the World Wide Web would become.
Yeah, I don't think anything will come of it. I think it's a dead technology. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember those ads. It was part of the Tom Selleck "You Will" ads. You remember those ads? They talked about, have you ever paid your toll at 60 miles an hour? You will. Have you ever video? You will. Every one of those things that they did, we are now doing today. Not all of them brought by AT&T.
Right.
Yeah,
we do video conferencing now, FaceTime, Google Hangouts, whatever. There's lots of apps that do that. But, the regular telephone lines of 1996 outside of, little tiny places like where I live don't exist anymore.
So my kids, the oldest is 16. She still is in the texting realm, but the 14 and the 11-year-old, they're all about FaceTime, Hangouts. Their version of a phone call is a video call. They don't do audio only calls. They're video calls or group video calls, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever it is, they're using the technology to make video calls ubiquitously. They don't make audio calls. And so that is the future, because it is the present of the people who will run the future. And the old fuddy-duddies like us who actually like to have an audio conversation, we're just going to die out like the dinosaurs.
Yeah. Is that the future, or is that merely the present?
No, it's the future. I think telepresence will be the future. It may not always be FaceTime, but people will expect more than an audio-only phone call from here on.
Yeah. Can't disagree with that.
Yeah. All right. So, Seth, what do you have to close the show in style this week?
All right. Well, Mark, this one is possible danger zone for you. It's called play248.2048.co. And so you start out with these tiles on a square, and you can use your arrow keys to merge similar tiles, and you have to get a tile to equal 2048. They can only be the same. You can only do up, down, left, right. So, and eventually, if you don't do it right, the board will get filled up, and then, you'll lose. So you're welcome, Mark. And all of the other opiates out there.
I have wasted bazillions of hours on this game on Android. And there's a number of different versions of it. And yeah, it is addictive, and it is simple gameplay, and I can't really talk about it because I'm too busy playing the game right now. You've just given a crack addict a hit, Seth, and I hope you are happy with yourself about that.
Well, I'm not looking for a job. I'm looking for a better job. So my revenge.
Yeah, mine may be available soon because I'll be curled up in a fetal position going, just one more.
I made it to 1024. The humanity.
All right, this is the part of the show where I tell you how you can feed back to us. Let us know what's going on, what you think, what you like, what you don't like. What questions do you have about this nigh on 9-year-old show? Actually, I think I've been podcasting 9 years. I think this show is more like 7 years or something, maybe 8. I'd have to do the math on it, look it up. 360 would be 7 years of 50 episode a year shows, but we didn't do 50 episodes a year, and we took some gaps. So I don't know, around 7 years, 7, 8 years. But I'm sure you have questions like, where did the music come from? Let us know. That would be an interesting question and answer sort of thing. We could do a whole show like that. The way you can do that is go to elementop.com, click the Contact Us button at the top of the page, answer the world's hardest CAPTCHA, fill out the form there, and click Send, and that will send an email that gets nicely formatted and prioritized in my inbox. Or you can dial 559-IM-OPI and leave us a voicemail on our Google Voice line, or you can send an email directly to the guys at GeekRant@elementop.com. And as always, the best thing you could do for us is tell other people about it. The second best thing you could do for us is throw money at us. Patreon.com/elementop. And we would appreciate that. I guess I don't have anything else to say. Guys, anything else?
Go team.
Yeah.
All right. Not the best color man in the business for nothing, Monty. I watched that movie again just last night. It still holds up. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. That's it for this episode of the Geek Rant. And remember, pay for what you like.
Toodaloo.
All right, Jenda, thanks for being with us. As always, a scholar and a gentleman. I'm going to end the YouTube stream. Bye, YouTube peoples.